So today I want to talk about Hubbard Park, and I timed this at perhaps a little less than 35, maybe 25 minutes or so. And then we'll hope that those who are interested may stick around and offer comments and we can field some questions. First of all, what is Hubbard Park for those who are not knowledgeable about it? Hubbard Park is a University of Iowa park that's located west of Madison Street at the base of the Pentacrest. It's between Jefferson Street and Iowa Avenue. It's the largest campus green space on the east side of the Iowa River. It takes up all of one city block from the original plat of the city in 1839, known as Block 98 by number. There were 100 such blocks that were originally platted for the city of Iowa City. Hubbard Park is one of precious few green spaces on the main campus, so I hope it doesn't give way to another construction project someday. Well, what existed on this space before Iowa City was founded in 1839? What about hundreds of years before that? This space was occupied once by Native Americans, as evidenced by the finding of projectile points or arrowheads in this area. That should come as no surprise. There was easy access to the river, and the land was rich with fish and game. I hope my slides are changing for you. Sometime after the 2008 Iowa City flood, work was done that required excavation of part of Hubbard Park. Some of you may remember seeing it all torn up. What was happening was a chilled water piping system was being routed through the park, excuse me, when some artifacts were uncovered. This led to a delay in the project, and state archaeologists became involved in a dig that took place in late 2014. The top layers of soil were carefully excavated and removed that then revealed different strata. The lowest layers of soil were believed to be from the 1840s, just after Iowa City was established. When various relics were recovered, they were associated with different decades. Many of the objects found were traced to an 1851 flood, which was the worst flood on record in all of Iowa City history, even greater than the 2008 flood. Some projectile points, that is arrowheads, were believed to date to 3000 BC. In addition to arrowheads, such things as a foundation for a home, an outhouse, shell fragments, an 1850 trades token, and an 1879 penny were found. And here are some of the other coins that were found, along with a variety of buttons. These were just some of the things that were found from this intensive dig. A very exhaustive 400-page report was issued by the Office of the State Archaeologist after the completion of the study. If anybody is interested in having that electronically, go ahead and just email me, and I should have had my email address printed on the screen. We'll give it out later, please remind me. White settlement was not legal here in Iowa City until the second Black Hawk Purchase, which was in 1837. Before that, the first Black Hawk Purchase, which is in yellow, took up most of the eastern part of Iowa. 2 years later, in 1839, Iowa City was established as a brand new city to be the new capital of the Iowa Territory. When Iowa City was platted in 1839, every block was assigned a number. The area where Hubbard Park was designated as Block 98. I'm going to mouse over that with, if you can see the revolving mouse, it's right there, Block 98. And like all blocks, it was divided into 8 different lots, each 80 by 150 feet. Front Street ran along the west of the block near the Iowa River. We no longer have Front Street. Each block was 320 by 320 feet. And here I'm outlining the capital to be with the red rectangle, and Block 98 that we're concerned about here with Hubbard Park is with the large red rectangle or outlined area. Here's an 1868 illustration that shows Block 98 with the yellow arrow. We can see an array of homes are depicted here. Irving Weber believed that Block 98 was used as a ferry and steamboat loading area in the 1840s and 1850s. We do have documentation that ferries came up the river, probably from the Mississippi River, without any blocking of dams at that time. We have good evidence that homes were built on Block 98 in the early 1850s, or possibly before. Lots were certainly purchased before that in the 1840s. The block was in a floodplain, as you can imagine, and was less desirable to occupy. Because of this, the land was cheap, intended to house working class people of modest means. In 1851, as I mentioned, Iowa City was inundated with big rains, creating this flood, rain falling steadily for some 40 days, we're told. Block 98 was completely submerged for many weeks. By 1868, the population in Block 98 probably increased significantly. The first African-American family is believed to have moved there during this period. And in 1881, another flood inundated Block 98 and forced most or all of the inhabitants out. 20 or more families were living in the block at this time. This is a photo taken in the late 1800s. Block 98 is on the right, over the bridge that you see there. The block on the left is Block 99, and both blocks show a considerable number of houses. The bridge is called the Centennial Bridge, which is no longer, and it was so named, it's the Iowa Avenue Bridge, the old one, so named because it was built in 1876, the centennial of the founding of the United States. The tallest building on the right there is the medical building. I'll mouse above that there if you can see that. That building burned down in 1901, taking the building to the left of it down with it. This photo is from about 1891, we believe. It was taken by Bertha Horak, who was unmarried and became Bertha Shambo later. She took the photograph of Paul and Rachel Ward. They're standing in front of their home, which is obviously quite dilapidated and heavily damaged. The condition of the home indicates that the Wards were rather poor. The photographer wrote on the back of the photograph, quote, "The house shown in the picture is one of the oldest in the state of Iowa," unquote. She further described how the roof was partially torn off from high winds. Apparently, several charities made offers to get them into a more comfortable home, but they refused to leave. They apparently, though, did leave in 1893. Shortly after that, the city demolished the home. Now I have several early 1900 photos showing dwellings in Lot 98. We can't be certain of some of these dates. I have found discrepancies in them, so we'll take them for what they're worth, but we believe this to be about from 1900. Block 98 is on our left. We can see a horse-drawn wagon on Madison Street. Iowa Avenue is simply a dirt road, like most roads in town. A crude pathway is seen going up toward Old Capitol, and a flag is flying above the Capitol dome. This view from, we think, the 1910s is from the west side of the Iowa River, looking toward Old Capitol. The dwellings on the left are in Block 99, which will be the future site of the Iowa Memorial Union. The houses on the far right are in Block 98, and the roadway between them is Jefferson Street coming all the way down to the riverbank. This is a little bit more of a panoramic view from 1911, we believe, and it shows a little bit more of blocks 98 and 99. Here's a view from the west from about 1913, block 98 being at the right. On the far right, we can see the 1912 Physics Building, later named McLean Hall. Many of the homes in block 98 were believed to be rental units. And notice how heavily treed the area is. This photo is believed to be from March 1919 and shows a very well-maintained Iowa Avenue. There's no evidence, though, of a brick surface, so it must be dirt without any trace of ruts. We can see a convertible at the end on Madison Street. That's kind of cool, right there. I'll describe what the building here is on the end in a moment. This March 1919 photo, probably taken the same day with the convertible down there, shows the homes in block 98 along Iowa Avenue. Note that the sidewalk consists of wooden planking. Irving Weber, local former historian who left us, unfortunately, in the 1990s, remembered delivering groceries to the corner store while walking the wooden sidewalk. This photo from the 1910s is made from the old Capitol grounds looking west down Iowa Avenue. Block 98 is on our right. The building on the corner is the Ranella grocery store, right here. This photo was taken from a little higher up on the Pentecrest. It offers a good view of Block 98, and it shows a large number of houses in place. Madison Street shows some moderate ruts on its dirt surface. There are very few buildings on the west side of the river, but if you can see where I'm mousing here, this is the deep cut that was made for the Crandic Railway that came through. And this may be a pretty accurate dating. I'm not sure. The Ranella grocery store now has the word groceries on the side of the building. Joseph Ranella, the owner, and his wife and daughter came to Iowa City in 1892, emigrating from Sicily. They established their store and did a thriving business with local residents as well as students. They lived just west of the store. A lot of their business was in fruit sales. Joseph had been in the fruit business in Italy. Around 1922, the date I have not been able to pin down, the university bought all the property in Block 98 and soon thereafter demolished all of the dwellings. This photo is quite interesting, and if it was really made in 1923, it only shows a few homes remaining in the whole block, which are here on the very east side along Madison Street. This would be the Ranella grocery and the home of the Ranellas, and then something else back here. Otherwise, it's all cleared, not only cleared off, but a very smooth surface. This is Iowa Stadium, which was the football stadium prior to Kinnick Stadium that spanned the area between the Burlington Street Bridge and the Iowa Avenue Bridge. That's where all the football games were held until around 1929 when Kinnick opened, and there is even a baseball field there. This is the old Armory building right here. I want to go back because I have some comments I wanted to make here about the Ranellas. After vacating Block 98, the Ranellas bought the building that houses today's airliner on Clinton Street. They opened a large fruit and sundry store there, and the family continued with the store until 1944. Then one of Joseph's sons took over the business and made the store into a tavern, steakhouse, and Italian restaurant, which he named the Airliner, and it's still the Airliner today. Another of Joseph's sons, Tony, owned and operated the Bowery Street grocery from 1944 to 1950. For those of you who have been in Iowa City for quite some time, you might remember that it's been a variety of different grocery businesses. It housed at least 11 different ones over the years, and it housed the first New Pioneer Co-op in Iowa City. So Block 98 remained a residential neighborhood until the early to mid 1920s, having been occupied by a diverse group of Europeans, African Americans. Most of the people were working and middle-class individuals who were employed in local trades. Homes were in place on this block for approximately 70 years. Now, a campaign to build an Iowa Memorial Union started in 1919. And a few years later, in 1922, Iowa professor B.J. Lambert proposed this site, I'm showing on the picture, in configuration for a union building. It would occupy the intersection of Madison Street and Iowa Avenue with the roundabout road configuration, but the idea failed to gain acceptance. Instead, Block 99, which is the one north of Block 98, was chosen as the site. This photo from 1924 shows that buildings were still in place. This was before demolition. Scott and Leonard's, in a book about Iowa campus buildings, stated this, quote, with the close of World War I, student unions honoring the veterans of that conflict came into vogue at large Midwestern universities, unquote. Well, the building served as not only a monument to that, but those who had served in the Civil War which were students from the University of Iowa as well as local residents, Spanish-American War, or World War I. One homeowner in this block sued the state of Iowa, University of Iowa, claiming that her property was illegally confiscated by the use of the right of eminent domain, but she lost her case. The university went ahead with the configuration or construction of the Union. Over the years, it has had some 6 different construction phases. Here's a great aerial photo of the Union around the time of completion of Unit 1 in 1925, late 1925. We can see that about half of the houses, or at least some of them, remain in the block. I'm guessing of all these vast numbers of wonderful trees that we see here, that many or most were lost to the Dutch elm disease in the 1950s and 60s. This is probably the Iowa president's home that I'm mousing over right here. This is okay, so in 1926, or perhaps a little earlier, the university constructed the women's athletic field on Block 98. And that's probably what they had their designs on when they bought the property and destroyed all the buildings. This contained an area for field hockey, several baseball diamonds, and other playing fields. The photo was made shortly after it was opened. I found evidence from period newspapers that a smaller women's athletic field was constructed between Block 98 and the river, probably about where this arrow would be here. It contained an area for field hockey and whatever else, but it became too small for their needs. That probably led to their desire to acquire Block 98. I found this picture in the University of Iowa Photo Archives. I like it for several reasons. The long row of old cars is pretty cool along Iowa Avenue. Iowa Avenue has a boulevard which is much wider than today because now we have 2 lanes in each direction. And we can see that it has a brick surface on the road. And the women's athletic field has a fence around it. Here's an image. It's not coming up. Well, I wonder what happened there. Well, that's okay. It was just another image which we don't have to look at. If we go to the north end of Hubbard Park, this historical marker can be seen just along the Madison Street fence. It addresses much of the history that I've just offered you. The fence, which goes along Madison Avenue and Iowa Avenue, is part decorative and part functional, since it provides a separation from traffic along these busy streets. Now, let's talk about the little chapel called Danforth Chapel. In February of 1952, it was announced that bids would be received for the construction of a, quote, little red brick chapel on the east bank of the Iowa River, just south of the Memorial Union. Soon it was completed, and it was dedicated in January of 1953 as Danforth Chapel. So who was Danforth, and why was the chapel built here? The idea stemmed from a 1930s group that included the director of the Iowa Memorial Union. There had been no chapel on campus since 1892. A university architect made drawings of an old church found by the director. Then a lack of funds put the project on hold until 1950. A Mr. Danforth offered to fund the project. I don't know if the university approached him directly or if Danforth initiated the project. I assume Danforth was a notable Iowa alum or possibly a big benefactor of the university. Well, such was not the case. William H. Danforth, who lived from 1870 to 1955, was the founder of the Ralston Purina Company. Hence, we can say that Hubbard Park has a very indirect connection with dog food. Some of you may have known the Danforth name by way of his grandson, John Danforth, who served as a U.S. Senator from Missouri and as an ambassador to the United Nations. The Danforth Foundation funded the chapel. In 1927, the Danforth Chapel program was founded to support establishment of 24 chapels, 15 of them built on college and university campuses. These chapels emphasized the Christian faith in their design, but were meant to accommodate for other faiths as well. Most of the Christian iconography has been removed to show that the space is not specific to one religion. Now I want to talk about Philip G. Hubbard. Some of you may have known Philip Hubbard. Although I was on the UI faculty during his last 11 years of tenure, I never had the pleasure of meeting him. I have since learned that he was highly regarded for his scholarly work, that he had a profound dedication to humanitarian causes, and he had a great compassion for people. He was very well loved. Philip Gamaliel Hubbard was born on March 4th, 1921 in Macon, Missouri. This is a photo of him when he was 47 years old. Philip's mother taught school in a segregated school system in Missouri. She was widowed shortly after Philip's birth. When Philip was 4, she moved her family to Iowa because schools were integrated here. She worked in Des Moines as an elevator operator. Philip graduated from North High School, where he excelled in academics and participated in many clubs and in sports. He shined shoes for 15 cents a pair, managing to save over $250 for college. He chose to study at the University of Iowa rather than Iowa State because he could shine shoes at the Jefferson Hotel in Iowa City and earn money. Both the university administration and the Iowa City community shunned blacks at this time. In fact, when University Heights was established in the 1930s, it stated that its lots were, quote, for the benefit of the white race only. In 1940, black men were not allowed to live in university housing, so Philip found a place to live with one of the only 6 African-American households in Iowa City. Some of the other black students lived in the Tate Arms building on South Dubuque Street. Many of you know of this building. It's directly east of the Johnson County Administration building, and I think it came close to being demolished. It was owned and operated by Elizabeth Tate, and in her honor, the Tate High School was named, and it opened in Iowa City in the fall of 2005 as an alternative high school. In fact, black students were not allowed to even attend university events if white students registered complaints. So Hubbard and his black classmates designed events for themselves. It was in 1946 that the first African-American students were permitted to live in dormitories. Hubbard married in 1943 and went on to raise 5 children. During a stint in the Army Reserves, he received Army certification in electrical engineering and conducted war research at the University of Iowa. And in 1947, he graduated with honors with a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering. Notably, Hubbard became the first black faculty member at the University of Iowa, and that was in 1947, holding a position as a research engineer. He continued his education at Iowa and obtained an MA in mechanics and hydraulics, and in 1954 he earned a doctorate in engineering. In 1951, Hubbard founded the Hubbard Instrument Company. He invented 2 instruments for measuring fluid turbulence. He taught mechanics and hydraulics at Iowa from 1954 until 1966 and continued with the Hubbard Instrument Company, and he consulted branches of the military, General Electric, and General Motors. Hubbard worked to eliminate the housing discrimination that had continued since his college days, more than 20 years earlier. In this undated letter we won't try to read, Hubbard expressed the need for open and fair housing in Iowa City. He worked toward this for many years. As another example of his work on behalf of African Americans, I found this 1960 Press Citizen article that described, quote, 3 Negro students from Prince Edward County, Virginia, who left without school facilities as a result of an integration dispute, are expected to arrive in Iowa City this weekend to attend City High School this fall, unquote. Hubbard took one of these students into his home. Hubbard was a member of a group called the Iowa City Sponsors for Equal Education. In the same article, I found that Helen Lemmy was also a member of this group. The Lemmy Elementary School on the east side of Iowa City was named in her honor. Hubbard spoke before civic groups, urging community leaders to approve a stronger housing ordinance for Iowa City, and one was adopted in August of 1964. On January 1st of 1966, Hubbard became Dean of Academic Affairs, which made him the first Black administrator at any of Iowa's 3 state universities. He played a key role in keeping the university running during the anti-war protests in the late 1960s and early 1970s. I'm reminded that the anniversary of Kent State was just the other day. He was not afraid of crowds of angry students, and he mingled with them in order to converse one-on-one. Here is Dr. Hubbard in later years. In 1971, he became the first Black vice president at a Big Ten university when he accepted the position of vice president of student services. Along with others, Hubbard founded Opportunity at Iowa in 1987 as a program geared toward attracting and retaining both minority students and faculty. He was an advisor to 6 University of Iowa presidents and served on and chaired numerous campus committees, task forces, and state and national advisory groups. The list goes on. At the end of 1990, Philip Hubbard retired at the age of 69 after a more than 50-year relationship with the University of Iowa. Just before he retired on December 31st, 1990, on December 6th, he was honored with the renaming of Union Field to Hubbard Park. After his retirement, Hubbard said he would continue to help UI's minority recruitment efforts part-time. The limestone sign that we see here is one of the original slabs removed from around the old Capitol in 1973. And the nearby plaque serves as another recognition for Philip Hubbard. In addition, Dr. Hubbard was honored with the naming of the Hubbard Commons in the IMU, and the Philip G. Hubbard Human Rights Award was created. In 1996, Hubbard authored a book, New Dawn, a 150-year look at human rights at the University of Iowa. And in 1999, he published this book entitled My Iowa Journey, the life story of the University of Iowa's first tenured African-American professor. Hubbard died on January 10, 2002, at the age of 80. In August 2012, he was inducted into the Iowa African American Hall of Fame. A final note about Hubbard Park. I found this group of markers, which appears to be a tribute to various sororities and fraternities. It's located, as you can see, near the Danforth Chapel. In conclusion, today's Hubbard Park is a focal point for student gatherings, including social events, concerts, and other ventures. There's more than meets the eye when an unknowing individual sees this green space, for it holds quite a history, including that of its Native American occupancy, its later working class settlers, and the story of the distinguished man for whom the park is named. And as a final note, I mentioned at the beginning that I hope the green space never goes away. It almost did. In 1988, a threat was made to turn it into a parking lot, but quite a protest was made by a joint group of students and faculty, and fortunately the park was saved. It was known as Union Field, as I mentioned, just before Hubbard Park. I'm not sure at what time it became known as that. After the homes were demolished, it was turned into the women's athletic field, then later became known as Union Field. So that completes the presentation, and I sure hope we'd have some comments and maybe some questions. Thank you very much.